Hello everyone, this is part 17 of What If Naruto Was the God of Taijutsu, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Most of the crowd sat in stunned silence as they stared at the giant black tower that had appeared in front of them. Just moments ago they had been cheering like crazy for what had been the most heated battle of the tournament yet. Now, they simply didn't know what to think. Guy, however, was not one to sit idle. Lee, Hinata, Naruto. He was off towards the tower faster than lightning. Guy, wait, Kakashi screamed, but his rival was already gone. Guy appeared in front of the giant barrier, his fist pulled back, ready to deliver a powerful punch. No you don't, Zabuza shouted as he appeared behind the Jonin and latched himself onto him. Let me go. Guy shook him off. My students are in there. Just then several explosions bounced off the arena as the Anbu appeared. A couple of them into the barrier and they suddenly caught fire and tumbled towards the crowd. All the other Jonin who had just been on the move paused as well. You see, Zabuza shouted, this isn't an ordinary barrier. Zabuza's right. Kakashi landed next to them. It's dangerous. Let's get up to Hokage-sama. He'll know what to do. Guy nodded. All three Jonin vanished an instant later. Meanwhile the crowd finally seemed to realize what was going on. Panic was quickly spreading and they were trying to flee the stadium. What the heck is going on? Temari asked as she watched people fleeing by her. I'm not sure. Haku shook his head and turned to the others that were with them. We need to get you guys out of here though. The village may be under attack. Attack! Tazuna shouted in horror. Can we even get out of here without being trampled? Ayami asked skeptically. Haku smiled. We're shinobi, we'll get you out. While all this had gone on, the Kabuto who stood next to the Hokage gave a small victorious smile. Looks like you didn't catch me in time. He had no time to move as his limbs were bound by a wood technique. You bastard, Yamato seethed as he stared with complete loathing at the man. He wanted to crush the life out of him right on the spot. What did you do? The Hokage asked gravely as he walked up behind the bound man. I created a barrier that also acted as a signal. Kabuto answered as if he had been expecting the question. Sarutobi turned his gaze to the black tower. It went impossibly high into the air, so it was definitely visible for miles. That meant an enemy army was likely already at the gates. He had to think fast. Not even a moment later and all kinds of Jonin and Chunin began to appear around him. They were crowded incredibly close together on the tight space of the roof of the stadium. Hayate appeared bowed in front of him. I apologize, Hokage-sama. His cough wasn't present at all. I let the enemy catch me off guard. Sarutobi nodded down at him. He didn't have much time to waste with words, so instead he turned his attention to Kabuto. What are your intentions? Kabuto gave a restricted shrug. Just think of this as an experiment to provide me with some amusement. You won't escape with your life. Guy shouted as he took a step forward. The second we bring that barrier down, your life is forfeit. Kabuto chuckled. You better hurry then. If you open it too late, I'll be the least of your worries. Everyone's eyes widened and they turned back to the barrier. Naruto was in there, which meant only one thing. You bastard, Guy had to restrain every muscle in his body to keep from destroying the man in front of him. That's enough, Guy. The Hokage shouted. I need all the Jonin and Chunin to report to the front gate immediately to back him up for an invasion. The Hokage turned to a Chunin who was kneeling on the roof. Get the best shinobi from our barrier branch here now. I want him to begin breaking that thing down immediately. All Jonin sensei, gather your genin and have them begin to evacuate the civilians. Their safety is a top priority. Sir, everyone shouted as they all fled about to perform their assigned tasks. The only Konoha shinobi left around the Hokage were Hiashi, Kakashi, Yamato, Guy, Hayate and Zabuza. Just then a Chunin who had been stationed at the gate landed in front of Hokage. Hokage-sama, we're under attack. He shouted. How many of them are there? He asked immediately. How long can you keep them from breaching the gates? Sir, the man hesitated. Speak. Sarutobi didn't have time for this. There were at least a couple thousand of them, but they were coming from the sky. Many of them have already flown into the village. The Hokage's eyes widened. They set fires everywhere as they traveled. There were more approaching from the forest floor, but I didn't stay long enough to get even a rough number. Sora Shinobi technology. Everyone present turned back to Kabuto. The white-haired man broke out into laughter. Nothing like that, even I'm not capable of locating that old village. Hokage-sama. Hiyashi shouted suddenly, his Byakugan was on. How are they doing it, Hiyashi? The Hokage turned to the head of the Hyuga. Not they, he. Hiyashi blinked a couple times as if to make sure he was seeing things right. What is it? The Hokage's patience was wearing thin. There are thousands of them all right, but they're all the same person. Hiyashi's voice came out dry. Who? Sarutobi shouted. The contestant. Abumi Zaku. Just as he uttered those words, a couple dozen of said boy came flying overhead. They were propelling themselves forward with the fire that sprayed from their hands. I'm back B. All of them yelled as their stomachs opened and kunai began firing. Hokage-sama, take cover. Kakashi and Guy shouted as they moved to attack the small fleet overhead. Sarutobi didn't move an inch from the spot though. Instead he formed a set of seals. Kaiten, Gokakyu no Jutsu. He breathed out a fireball so massive that it easily was big enough to hit every Zaku overhead, and hit them it did. They were all obliterated to the point that not even ashes remained. Not Hokage for nothing, huh? Kabuto chuckled. I wonder though how you'll all fare against a group of opponents just as strong as yourself. Silence him. Sarutobi didn't even turn back to Kabuto. Yamato didn't need to be told twice. He clenched his hand and the wood tightened around Kabuto until he puffed into smoke. My orders from before stand the same. The Hokage shouted. The civilians are number one priority. I want the all-Anbu operatives to engage the Otogakure shinobi known as Zaku that have infiltrated the village. Remember to watch out for his self-destructing ability. The Anbu nodded and were also off. Sir. Kakashi's voice was heavy with dread. He was up on the roof staring off towards the gates. Sarutobi jumped up next to him immediately. The sight that befell his eyes made his face go pale. Many places of the village had already been set ablaze as thousands of the tiny figures that could only be Zaku flew around. Many shinobi were already engaging the robotic shinobi as others hurried towards the gates. For it was at the gates that an even more disturbing sight lay. All around, the gates of Konoha had already fallen. Hundreds of shinobi garbed in black poured into the village. The most horrendous thing though, was the way in which the gates had been destroyed. One wall had been completely overrun by giant roots of wood. Another looked like it had been blasted away by a tidal wave. Yet another had been set completely ablaze. The final wall had been battered down by a group of giant snakes. This can only mean one thing. Sarutobi rubbed his temple as he stared at the wreckage. Hiyashi, what is your clan doing? Most of them have joined the battle with your orders. Hiyashi answered without missing a beat. Excellent, I want you to stay by the barrier so you can protect the barrier squad once they arrive. I am leaving the E of the traitor, Yakushi Kabuto, to you at the time the barrier is down. Yes, sir. Hiyashi was off before anything else could be said. Zabuza. I'm already on it, Hokage-sama. Zabuza took off before anyone else could really be sure of what he had just been assigned. Kakashi, I need you to lead the engagement against the enemy at the second gate. Take command there. Kakashi looked at the Hokage in surprise before he nodded slowly. Yes, sir. Guy. Sarutobi shouted. The third gate, sir. Guy had a terrible feeling in the pit of his stomach. Yamato. Sir, you can't expect me to. Yamato stared in horror at the giant roots that had destroyed the first gate. Hayate, I need you to go with him. I won't fail again, sir. Hayate nodded to Yamato, who also said nothing more. Sarutobi turned his head to the giant snakes while he bit down on his thumb hard enough to draw B. Kuchio's no jutsu. A giant monkey suddenly appeared next to him. A series of protests from the remaining group of shinobi broke out. Hokage-sama, you cannot enter the front lines. Silence. Sarutobi roared. It is time I take responsibility for my mistake. I thought I could pass it off to the next generation, but that was wrong. Monkey King Enma. Sarutobi extended his hand. The monkey that stood next to him smirked. Been a long time since I've seen you this serious, Sarutobi. The monkey transformed into a staff that Sarutobi swung around a couple of times. It's about time. For our village. Sarutobi shouted as he threw his Hokage garments aside, revealing shinobi armor on underneath. He and the remaining shinobi took off towards their respective gates. What is this? Lee shouted as he slowly turned himself around, gazing at the black barrier that had him trapped. Just a little something that I had set up so we could have a good time without being interrupted. Kabuto chuckled as he pushed his glasses up and walked over to Naruto. I give you both my thanks. Things would have been much more difficult if you hadn't beaten the Jinchuriki host down so much. Kabuto nudged Naruto in the ribs with his foot. Don't touch him, Hinata shouted. She charged at Kabuto without hesitation. Before she even got close, Neji appeared in her path. Hinata stopped hard. Ni-san, move, Hinata said carefully. I'm sorry, Hinata-sama, I'm not in control of my body. Neji stepped forward and sent a Yuuken into Hinata's stomach, blasting her off her feet. She landed with a loud splash a couple feet away. Hinata. Lee ran up to her and lifted her up slightly. He then glared at Kabuto. What did you do to Neji? Just then he noticed strange black markings appear all over Neji's body. I placed a special seal on him, Kabuto said as he bent down and grabbed Naruto by the hair. The blonde grit his teeth in pain as the white-haired man hoisted him up. His body is mine to control with my mind. If you want to stop him, you'll have to immobilize him. Or KU. Hinata muttered darkly as she stumbled to her feet. Kabuto broke into laughter. If you can. He reached into his back pouch and pulled out a small wooden cross. Tell me, Naruto-kun, do you know what this is? Go to hell. Naruto seethed darkly. Kabuto's wicked smile grew a little bigger. He bent down and planted the small cross in the ground beneath the water. He then formed a single one-handed seal. The small cross sprouted smoke, and when the smoke cleared, the cross was the size of himself. This is the tool that human s. This is where the QB will be extracted from. Everyone widened their eyes. Before Lee or Hinata could react, Kabuto s the back of Naruto's head against the cross. He grabbed one of his hands, pinned it up with a kunai right through Naruto's palm. He then grabbed the other hand and pinned it to the other side. Naruto howled in pain each time. Naruto-kun. Naruto. Lee and Hinata ran forward, but Neji again stood in the way. Hinata. You go for him. I'll take care of Neji. Lee shouted as he lunged forward, tackling Neji to the ground. Hinata ran past them and straight at Kabuto. Oh. Kabuto had to resist the urge to chuckle as Hinata ran up to him. She reached him and swung her Yuuken, but Kabuto knocked the strike aside. Before she could react, he buried his foot in her ribs. Hinata was sent rolling to the side. Lee raised his arm and was about to swing his fist down, but he felt a sudden burning sensation in his stomach. He was then sent flying upwards. He crashed down in the shallow water with a loud splash. Kabuto slowly took a few steps forward. I'll be with you in a minute, Naruto-kun. I want to have a little fun before I have to get serious. Lay another hand on my friends and I'll bite him off. Naruto looked up and his eyes were glowing red. A second later though, and he felt something strange. Something was siphoning his power. His red eyes returned back to blue. Hinata gasped as she stumbled back up. Naruto-kun. Don't channel the fox's chakra. That thing is stealing it. She then began to charge back towards him, fully intent on freeing him. Please try to refrain from interfering further. You wouldn't even be here if you hadn't run to check on your teammates. What an annoying girl. Kabuto sighed at her. He ran through a couple seals. Whips of water shot up and bound Hinata. She stumbled forward and her face disappeared below the water. She brought it up with a loud gasp and struggled to break free. What do you really intend to do here? Kabuto asked snidely. You are still severely hurt from fighting your cousin. Even if you weren't, I am stronger than most jonin. You have no chance of changing anything. Why are you doing this? Hinata shouted before her face was dragged under water again. She brought it up coughing and gagging a couple seconds later. What is your reason for attacking the village? Lee was back on his feet nursing his stomach. Neji had yet to attack him again. I thought that was Orochimaru's goal. Not yours. Is it revenge? Kabuto gave a dark chuckle. Revenge? Nothing as petty as that. Then what the hell are you attacking us for? Naruto was attempting to free his hands, but they were only be more freely the more he struggled. For science. Everyone there, including Neji, raised their eyebrows. I am a researcher. Everything I do is to further progress my hypothesis. I felt no loyalty towards the snake Sannin. I followed him simply because he had the resources and the means for me to conduct whatever experiment I needed. So what is your hypothesis? Hinata spit water from her mouth as she yelled. Can the village of Konohagakure actually fall? Kabuto smiled evilly. Is it possible? This village withstood the strains of the ninja wars despite the odds that it should have fallen. It managed to repress an attack by the Kyuubi multiple times. What is it that allowed for that? Was it this so-called wall of fire, great leadership, pure luck? I am interested in testing this for myself and seeing the results firsthand. I think you'll find fate is against you in your endeavor. Neji clearly could still control his speech. Fate. I don't believe in something as half-assed as that. Kabuto roared with laughter. People don't lose because it was destiny. Science clearly disproves that theory. Now be a good little pawn and quit mouthing such garbage. Neji grit his teeth as he willed his body to move. No matter how hard he tried though it just wouldn't happen. Now, Kabuto continued. I heard something interesting. You really intend to fight him the way you are, Lee-kun. Kabuto smiled as he walked right behind Neji and patted him on the face. If it means I am able to get closer to you and save my best friend then I will. Lee slowly slid back into his stance. You idiot, Neji shouted. You can't beat me. Kabuto's cynical smile remained plastered on his face. Marvelous, there may not be a crowd to watch anymore, but it looks like the show will go on. Kabuto turned sideways. Proctor, would you mind starting the match? Oh, that's right. I ejected him. I guess I'll do the honors. Kabuto took a couple steps backwards and raised his hand into the air. Hinata was still struggling to get free from the water whips and Naruto's hands had finally gone numb from the pain. Let the final match of Konoha's Chunin exam tournament begin. Lee and Neji both charged forward. Just what the hell is going on? Ino shouted as she and the rest of the remaining rookies stood by the doors as people continued to file out in a panic. Didn't you listen to Kurenai-sensei or Asuma-sensei at all? Shikamaru hated repeating things. The village is under attack and we have to make sure the civilians get out safely. This is so sudden though. Chuji was eating his chips even faster than before. I felt one surge of chakra but now nothing. Well, something is coming. Kiba turned his nose to the sky, sniffing. Akamaru was growling. Just then a dozen Zakus came flying low, spraying fire and launching kunai. What the hell? All the genin immediately took cover. Didn't that guy blow up? Sakura looked up from behind a chair that she had hid behind. Shino was right by her. It would appear he has been mass-produced. Much like a toy on an assembly line. Shino's insects were already flying into action. We must engage them to protect the civilians. Us. Ino shouted from an unknown location. Most of the jonin are gone. Of course it's up to us. Kiba yelled as Akamaru transformed. Gatsuga. He and Akamaru flew at the Zakus but they dodged out of the way. They then veered back and charged at him. Kiba. Sakura shouted as she quickly formed several seals. The Zaku began to swing around out of control as she placed them under a genjutsu. Nice going, Sakura. Kiba yelled as S into the ones flying around drunkenly. Everyone else hurry up and help. Kiba is right. We got a couple lucky first hits but this man fought toe-to-toe with the Hyuga genius. Shino landed next to both his teammate. We need to team up to take them all down. Shino. Shikamaru shouted. If you can ground them, do it. Almost everyone had cleared the arena and now only the genin and the attacking Zakus were left. Acknowledged. Shino yelled back. His bugs were flying into action, quickly blinding many Zaku. They don't have an internal chakra source so blinding them is the most I can do. As he said this 3 of the Zakus crashed into the ground. Cage main no jutsu. Shikamaru instantly bound them. Gatsuga. Kiba and Akamaru flew at 2 of them. Nikuden Sensha. Choji was already inflated into a giant ball. He was bouncing down the steps towards the last one. All 3 of them hit their targets at the same time. Move away. Remember they explode. Shino shouted. Not needed to be reminded twice, all 3 of them cleared the area just as the Zakus went off. Shintention no jutsu. Ino shouted switched into the body of a Zaku that had stopped moving thanks to a genjutsu by Sakura. The body tumbled towards the ground, out of control. Body expansion. Choji shouted as his arm inflated. He swatted the Zaku into the ground where it exploded a few seconds later. Ino immediately opened her eyes. It's crazy, she shouted, running towards Shikamaru. What are you talking about? He looked at her in annoyance. He had sweat rolling down his face as he held onto another couple. When I entered his mind, I could see the view of all of them at once. They're laying waste to the village. Ino sounded completely panicked. We need to get out of here and help them fight. The civilians, Choji reminded Ino gently. He and Kiba had just destroyed the last couple Zakis that had invaded the arena. There aren't any more here. There are plenty out there though. We need to help them. I agree with her. Kiba stepped forward. Did you see the way we took care of them? We might be the best 6-man 1-dog team force in existence. I also think it would be prudent to lend the others our aid. Shino walked towards them all slowly. You need to think about your health, Shino. Sakura suddenly scolded. You're still not up to full strength since you lost your arm. The situation does not give me time to be concerned about such trivial things. Shino adjusted his glasses, clearly irritated at being underestimated. We don't have time to argue. Shikamaru scratched his head. Let's go. He finally said. They need our help. Yes. Everyone else chorused in agreement. Zaku. Dosu yelled as he ran down to streets of Konoha. He had just broken out of the infirmary, having seen all the flying forms of the boy who was once teammate. Buildings to his left and right were ablaze, broken glass littered the streets, and the only people present were shinobi that fought from the roofs. Zaku, what the hell happened to you? Dosu. 4 Zaku landed down gently right in front of him. I didn't even recognize you without all your face bandages. If I had, I would have tried to KO you instantly. All 4 of them gave a cruel smile as they raised their palms up so they were pointed at him. Zaku. Dosu clenched his fists tight. What did Kabuto do to you? All 4 Zaku broke into a robotic laughter. The sound was eerie and sent shivers down Dosu's spine. That secret weapon that Kabuto has had everyone working on for the last month, that was me. I'm going to be the instrument that takes down this village. Dosu stared in disbelief at his former teammate. You really believe that? He asked quietly. The Zakis lowered their hands slightly in confusion. He's just using you, you fool. Dosu screamed as loud as he could. What do you think is going to happen when your usefulness has run out? Once he frees that fox, you're just fodder like everyone else. Was it worth trading away your body? Silence settled between the 2, or 5 of them. Answer me, Zaku. You talk too much. They raised their arms back up to fire. Not so fast. Spikes of ice propelled forward by a strong gale of wind suddenly impaled all 4 Zakis. They exploded before they were even able to register what happened. Dosu spun around in surprise. You. He shouted as Haku and a blonde girl slowly walked up to him. This that 3rd teammate you just told me about. Temari eyed Dosu up and down carefully. You should already know him. Haku sighed dramatically. You watched him fight Lee-san in the tournament. You any good without that sound manipulator on your arm? Temari asked skeptically. Dosu turned away before answering. Don't follow me. He began walking away from the 2 of them. Where are you going? Haku asked as he ran up to him. To stop Zaku. Dosu answered immediately, causing Haku and Temari to stop and stare at each other in surprise. You know where the real one is? Temari asked as she also ran to catch up. He should be back at the base. At the very least his mind is. Dosu didn't break stride. How do you know that? Can you be sure there is a real one? Haku was now walking right next to him. Of course there is. The signs are obvious. Dosu finally stopped and turned towards him. What signs? Temari and Haku asked at the same time. Genjutsu. All 3 turned in surprise. Zabuza stood behind them. One needs a brain that feels senses to be affected by Genjutsu. Odds are they are all being controlled by a single brainwave that is being transmitted from Otogako's closest base. The first exam proctor. Dosu asked in surprise. That's Zabuza sensei to you. Zabuza said as he looked over the 3 genin in front of him. You 2 will need these. He threw Dosu and Temari headbands with a leaf etched into each to them. What are we going to do with these? Dosu asked suspiciously. Wear them proudly, of course. Zabuza received a strange look from all 3 of them. Team Zabuza's genin team is officially formed and we have been given our first mission. Stop the Otogakure Genin Abumizaku and protect the village kind enough to take us in. Haku broke into a smile. Guess it is time to return the favor. He turned to Dosu. I thought I told you not to follow me. Dosu felt his voice falter. This is something I have to do. Lead the way, shorty. Temari nudged Dosu in the shoulder. She already bore the Konoha headband on her head. We're a team now. Get used to us. Dosu felt a strange feeling well up inside as he too slipped the Konoha band around his forehead. We're going to need a way to sneak out. There are a lot of enemies. Zabuza chuckled. You leave that to me. Yamato landed nimbly on the roof of a building just outside of the destruction that had been incurred by the overgrowing roots. His knees felt weak as he stared at the carnage in front of him. Dozens of shinobi on both sides already lay S.B. and fire were everywhere. Yet still more people were fighting and attempting to end one another. What a scene. Is this the first time you've experienced war? Hayate asked as he landed next to him. Yamato nodded slowly. I was just a genin when the Third Ninja World War was ending. I never had a chance to go out to the field. Is it always quite this horrific? It is. Hayate nodded honestly, his cough had yet to come back. How could all of these men have snuck in? Could Konoha's detection barrier have fallen? Someone, or several people led them in. Yamato answered as something terrible caught his eye. That man there, he led them in. Hayate turned his gaze and his eyes widened remarkably. So my hunch was right, the same face on our monument. As he spoke, the man they were staring at unleashed another wave of giant roots that began tearing through the ground and sending many shinobi flying, both friend and foe. Shodai-sama, Yamato was hoping he had been wrong, but no one else was capable of producing a wood technique quite like that. He is the general leading this division of forces, then. Hayate drew his blade and slid into a fighting stance. If we defeat him, the whole division will go into disarray. Before Yamato could say anything more, Hayate was gone. Senju Hashirama had never felt more pain in his unbeating heart than at this very moment as he destroyed the village he had helped create and the shinobi of this generation. I am sorry, my children. He was running through seals to unleash another attack. He never completed it. A man with a sword and a brown hair appeared right in front of him, swinging horizontally. The man threw his arms completely and continued on to hack his whole body in half. Hashirama's hands fell to the ground, followed by his upper body. I am sorry, Shodai-sama. The proctor spoke as he turned towards the downed former leader. I had expected more from you, however. You have made a grave mistake in thinking that attack would finish this body. Hashirama's head spoke from the ground. What? Hayate took a step back as he noticed the hands he had just seen off crumple apart before reforming back onto his arms. The hands finished the seals and roots sprang forth right beneath Hayate's feet. Hang on, Hayate-san. Yamato shouted. Suddenly the roots bent away from the shinobi and instead down onto a group of Otogakure shinobi who had just made it into the village. Impossible, no one alive should be capable of controlling Mokuton. Hashirama's head just reformed onto his body and he was able to gaze at Yamato, who stood right in front of him. Forgive me, Shodai-sama. I will have to fight and kill you for the sake of the village. Hashirama smiled sadly. Unfortunately, I am you as I am. The technique that was used to bring me back to life has bound my soul to this body. You must find a way to seal me. How terrible. Yamato felt sick at the explanation of the technique and what he would have to do. It is terrible, but you must find it in yourself to fight and defeat me. Do not mourn over my fate. The controller of this technique will not give me room to be lenient. Hashirama spoke quickly. He needed to pass this information on as fast as possible. Do what you must to protect this village. I am no longer your leader but your sworn enemy who will do whatever I must to crush this place and everyone in it. Shodai-sama, Yamato choked out. He couldn't believe this. He was going to have to fight the man he had idolized more than any other Hokage. It was almost too much to ask. The roots around his feet suddenly sprung to life. Crap. Yamato had let his sentimentality cost him. Hold on. Hayate shouted as he the roots apart and grabbed Yamato, yanking him away all in one fluid motion. I owe you one. Yamato sighed in relief. He had been moments away from being crushed to death. Hayate shook his head. I am convinced now that you are going to have to be the one to win this. Me? Yamato asked in surprise. You are much stronger though. You are the one. I will aid you however I can, but it must be you. Hayate turned back to the Shodai. Are you ready? I don't know, Yamato admitted as he stumbled up. You are not alone, Yamato. A heavy-set man said as he landed behind him. That's right, we'll back you up as well. A blond man landed next to him. It's time for Ino Shikacho to lend their aid to the village. A man that looked like an older version of Shikamaru said as he appeared last. Choza, Inoiki, Shikaku. Yamato turned and saw many more shinobi rushing into the front lines. We'll take care of any fodder. Shodai-sama, no, their leader is up to you. Shikaku said as he jumped into the fray. Good luck. The other two were quick to be after him. Everyone, Yamato's eyes slowly turned resolute. All right. I don't know how I'll do it, but I'll find a way. He turned towards Hashirama. I hope you are ready, Shodai-sama. I am going to show you that Mokuton has been entrusted in good hands. Kakashi-san, to your left. A man with a hood, raised cuff, and dark glasses shouted as he shoved the copy nin out of the way. He jumped after him just as a series of kunai with explosive tags landed on the spot. They all blew up, engulfing the area in flames. I owe you, Gen-san. Kakashi nodded to the head of the Aberrane clan. His Sharingan was still covered as he had to save his strength for the one who blasted down the gate. No problem, Gen replied, his bugs buzzing loudly around him, flying at more Otogakure shinobi. Kakashi's fist buried itself into the gut of an Otogakure shinobi. A kunai to the T put him down for good. With a slopping noise he pulled it out and immediately threw it right in between the eyes of another shinobi. Not many of those robotic genin this far out. Gen noticed as his bugs sucked the life out of a group of shinobi. All around the two of them many other battles were also taking place. Shinobi on both sides were dropping fast. It only took one stroke to bring many of them down. No, there isn't. It was just then Kakashi noticed it. A giant vortex of water being formed. Without hesitation he pulled his Sharingan up. He immediately formed the seals and a wall of earth rose up in front of him. The vortex of water flew forward and into the wall, cracking it badly, but it still managed to stand. The water that before would have torn through both friend and foe now instead flooded around, creating more of an inconvenience for the fighting shinobi than AS force. That's our man. Kakashi jumped over the wall and immediately ran forward. His Sharingan immediately picked up on the man who was none other than the Nadaime Hokage, Senju Tobarama. The nearest group of Konoha stood frozen in shock. Don't stand there, you fools. He is the enemy. Kakashi shouted too late. Tobarama split them all in half with a blade of water. Kakashi cursed. 6 shinobi simply because they were too surprised to move. How many more had been like that at the other gates as well? A Sharingan wielder, but in only one eye. Tobarama eyed Kakashi curiously as he approached him. Yo, Kakashi said as he stopped about 30 paces away. What happened to the rest of the Uchiha? It would be best if those with the Sharingan combat me since I specialize in Suten Ninjutsu. Tobarama was already running through seals as he talked. Sorry, but the Uchiha won't be showing up today. You'll have to bear with me. Kakashi's eye allowed him to mimic his movements. Neither man bothered to shout the name of their jutsu as another torrent of water formed in front of the Nadaime. Kakashi pulled the water that had been created earlier for his attack. The two blasts of water shot forward into each other and then blasted skywards. Soon a heavy rain poured down on all the shinobi in the current vicinity. How were you revived? Kakashi asked as the Nadaime became visible again. Someone perfected the technique Edo Tensei that I had begun to create. Tobarama charged forward and threw a punch. Kakashi blocked it and swung his leg in a sweep. If you know anyone capable of sealing, I suggest you get them over here. However, you'll have to weaken me before that will work. Tobarama backflipped over the sweep and attempted to catch Kakashi with a kick in the air. Kakashi caught his foot and threw the Nadaime straight into a nearby collapsed wall. Kakashi-san, Gen shouted with worry evident in his voice. Kakashi spun around and saw a giant man oozing dark energy coming straight at him. He was tall, dark-skinned and had long orange hair that fell wildly around his body. Gah! The man screamed incomprehensibly. Kakashi blocked the fist that the man threw but was knocked flying by the force behind it. He flew straight into Gen who was running towards him. They both tumbled to the ground. What is that guy? Kakashi asked as he stumbled to his feet. It's Jugo. Someone from Otogakure shouted in fear. He had no time to react as a Konoha shinobi s him in the back. Jugo. Kakashi turned and watched the man grow strange-looking smokestacks around his body. He had heard rumors of that name. A teenage boy had gone on a rampage and destroyed his home village. So this is how Orochimaru has been making those cursed seals. Obliterate. The man shouted as he suddenly fired a powerful beam of energy right at the two of them. Gen-san, it's time to move, Kakashi said as he jumped out of the way. The Aburame man was quickly after him. They landed on the highest vantage point available, which was a part of the gate that hadn't completely crumbled away. What Kakashi saw caused his eyes to go wide. There were at least 100 of the people exactly like the man that had just attacked the two of them. I think Otogakure just got reinforcements, Gen made his observation aloud. Kakashi sighed. The Nadaime was up and running at him too. This just keeps getting better and better. Extend. Sarutobi shouted as his pole that had once been Enma shot forward. It was taller than most buildings now and he held it high in the air. He swung it down hard on top of the head of one of the giant snakes that had torn down a wall of the village. The snake's head was sent crashing into the ground before it popped out of existence. Hokage-sama, you shouldn't be here. Leave this to us, a shinobi shouted as he landed next to his leader. Silence. I am not some crippled old man who can no longer fight. If someone dares attack my village, then I will of course be on the front lines. It is my duty as Hokage to defend my home with my life. The pole retracted back to normal length as Sarutobi stepped forward. Kukaku, the old man looked up at the giant purple snake that the voice had come from. It opened its mouth and Orochimaru slid out of it. Brave words for someone as senile as yourself. Orochimaru, how did I know I would find you slithering around here? This is Tobirama-sensei's technique, isn't it? Sarutobi stared with pure contempt at his former pupil. It is indeed. Orochimaru landed on the ground in front of his sensei, pulling out his sword from his mouth as he did. Kabuto seems to have done a fine job. I don't particularly like being a pawn, but I finally have immortality. It would also seem he pulled my men from all over the continent. I would guess there are more men here than even if Sunagakure had lent their aid. How many of you did he create? Sarutobi asked cautiously, ignoring the latter part of his student's rant. Orochimaru shrugged. Who knows? Aside from myself, I've only seen 3 others. He likely didn't have enough time to gather powerful shinobi from all over the world. You're giving me a lot of information, Sarutobi noted dryly. At least a lot for a man who never gave away anything before. No matter how much you know, it's too late for you to change anything, sensei. I'm telling you because I want you to know how greatly you've failed. What makes you so sure I've failed? Sarutobi already had a feeling he knew the answer. Orochimaru broke into another cackling fit. My snakes, of course, they're slithering all around your village, just eating up the yummy treats such as the children of this village. Sarutobi felt a vein on his head throb. You monster. He pointed his staff right at Orochimaru and fired it forward. Pointless, Orochimaru let the staff pierce him right in the heart. I have no reason to fear death, sensei. You brought this on yourself. You left it to Jonin to K me. This time I'll fight you myself with my full power and immortality. Sarutobi ignored him as he swung his staff around, with Orochimaru still hanging on it. He s the Sannin into one of his snakes, which in turn s into a building. The building collapsed and the snake puffed out of existence. Orochimaru slithered his way out of the rubble. I see you didn't bother to call my teammates back. You didn't think I would be here. I had no reason to concern either one of them with the likes of you. Sarutobi's staff retracted back to its normal length. Kukaku, Orochimaru continued to chuckle. You are no match for me, sensei. Orochimaru shouted. As he did, 3 giant snakes slithered forward at the old man at once. That's far enough, a lazy-sounding voice said as the snakes suddenly lost their heads. They vanished in a cloud of smoke before they could even hit the ground. Sarutobi slowly turned his head. You. Asuma stood slightly to the back and right of him. You got business to take care of with this guy, right? Asuma threw out his cigarette as he talked. His chakra knives were in either hand. I'll deal with those giant snakes. Not by yourself, Yuhi Kurenai said as she stepped out from behind him. I'll assist you. Asuma sighed. If you insist. Asuma, thank you. Sarutobi turned back towards Orochimaru. Don't mention it, Dad. Hiyashi tapped his foot impatiently as he waited for the barrier squad to arrive. He had been waiting here and could only watch with his Byakugan as battles broke out all across the village. It irritated him to do nothing while friend and foe see one another down. Finally, it looked like the barrier squad was approaching. Here we are, a man with a huge mustache shouted as he and 3 more shinobi landed. Hiyashi turned to them. Excellent. How soon do you think you can have the barrier down? The man with the mustache ignored Hiyashi's question and walked up to the barrier. He leaned his face in closely and rubbed his chin as he observed it. Yes, I see. He mumbled quietly to himself for a full antagonizing minute that drove the others mad. Hiyashi cleared his tea and repeated. Do you think you can take it down? The mustached man leaned his face away from the barrier and broke loudly into laughter. The only thing you will hear from me when I'm done is mission success. I hope you speak the truth. Hiyashi spoke coldly. My daughter and nephew are in there. Not to mention the longer we wait the closer the enemy gets to releasing our village's worst terror. You heard the man, men. The leader of the barrier squad shouted. Get to taking this thing down immediately. Hiyashi nodded his approval before he turned around. Just as he did, a man came running around the corner. Or perhaps limping would be a more accurate description. The Otogakure shinobi was leaving a large trail of B as he moved ever closer to the barrier. His left foot dragged uselessly behind his foot as it appeared to be bent at an odd angle. The Hyuga watched him with reserved awe and overall disinterest as the man finally collapsed. He reached his hand forward and placed his open palm on the ground. Kabuto-sama, I made it. Hiyashi's eyes widened as he watched black marking appear below his hand. I won't let you. He shouted too late as he whipped a kunai at the S-man. Kuchio's no jutsu, the man breathed his last breath as a single coffin slowly began to rise up in front of him, intercepting the kunai. It opened up and Hiyashi's eyes widened in shock and terror. It can't be. Why you? A lone woman stepped out of the coffin. She was dressed in a beautiful kimono. Her blue hair, which would normally have been long, was tied up in a bun behind her head. She had striking purple eyes that before Hiyashi felt like he could stare at forever with love. Now the sight of her made his stomach turn. Kana, his wife that had given birth to 2 beautiful children. How could he be expected to fight her? How was it even possible that she was here? Things were just so wrong. It's been a long time, my husband. The woman once known as Kana replied. Finally, Hiyashi found his voice as his training kicked in. So it has. He slowly slipped into his stance as he stared at his wife. I don't wish to fight you, but I see no other way. Your techniques are of serious danger to the men I am protecting. Kana smiled lovingly at him. Even in death you make me blush. I am sorry for being so weak that I got brought back by this technique. How are our daughters? Hiyashi shook his head. You've never been weak. He was about to say more, but a set of senbon appeared right in front of his face and he barely managed to deflect them. He then decided it was best to speak quickly before she was forced to attack more too. Hanabi is growing well. She is strong for her age. Hinata, things have been rough for her, but she has found a great boyfriend. Together she has become a truly great kunoichi. You'd be proud of her. Kana smiled as she pulled more senbon from the sleeves of her kimono. I'm glad. Feel my fist of youth. Guy's fist sa man so hard he crashed into another 3 before they all crashed into a collapsed building. Not one of them ever got up again. Who's next? Guy turned towards another group of shinobi who all back away slightly. Before that group could react, Guy was there, spinning so fast he was a green blur. Konoha Senpu. His kick shattered bones and busted organs instantly, ending most of their lives on the spot. Another shinobi ran up from behind. He s at the back of Guy's head only for him to vanish. Too slow. He grabbed the back of the man's head and s his face into the ground. B splattered in every direction as his head was crushed. Everyone move forward. We are pushing him back. Guy shouted as he moved on to his next group of opponents. The shinobi of Konoha behind him shouted acknowledgement to his order. Ever since Guy had arrived, they had been gaining an overwhelming advantage. Guy. A voice shouted that sent a shiver down the gown man's spine. You are still so full of youth despite the fact that you look almost as old as myself. Before Guy could react, a man appeared in front of him and drilled a punch into his stomach that knocked the wind out of him and sent him flying backwards. He hit the ground on his butt and looked in horror at the man that was in front of him. Hiro-sensei. Guy was practically looking at a carbon copy of himself, but there were a few key differences. The other man stood about an inch taller than Guy and his eyes were darkened by the effect of the jutsu that had brought him back. Guy slowly stood to his feet. How could this happen to you? Undeath is a cruel thing, that's for sure, Guy. Hiro spoke to his former student fondly. I was both hoping I would see you and that I wouldn't when I realized where I was. You've grown so much and that makes me happy, but it breaks my heart that I have to fight you. So the technique that brought the gate down was Asa Kujaku. Guy shook his head sadly. His hunch had been right. However, before he could say any more, a couple shinobi charged past him. We'll take care of him, Guy-san. They shouted triumphantly. Hiro looked down at them sadly. What I am about to do is most unyouthful, I apologize. Both men widened their eyes in surprise when he spoke as if nothing happened. A minute later though, and the sound of squishing reached their ears. Guy felt like throwing up on the spot. His sensei stood in front of him, his arms sticking out the back of his allies, holding their hearts in each hand. Hiro-sensei, this isn't like you. No. Hiro agreed. He dropped the hearts and retracted his hands. Both men dropped to the ground. There is no room for youth when you are you, I'm afraid. He slowly pulled the giant blades from his sea. Guy, you must find a way to put me down. I am sorry to have to ask you this, but it has to be you. Hiro slowly walked forward, his arms dripping the B of the men he just K. Guy gulped heavily before nodding. If you ask me to, I'll find a way, Hiro-sensei. After all, I have strived to become a man as youthful as yourself. Please tell me how you think I've done when I've defeated you. That's my youthful prodigy. Hiro nodded in satisfaction as he settled into a Goken stance. Guy settled into his own stance. They both jumped forward faster than the eye could see. Their fists connected with each other. They stepped back and each to the right and swung their legs forward. Their legs connected with one another while high in the air. They both dropped them down and stepped forward, their fists connecting with each other again. Your stance is as good as ever, Guy. Hiro shouted his praise as they continued to match one another's moves. I am glad to see you haven't been slacking since IS. Please. I am far too youthful to slack. As the two of them battled, the other shinobi began to engage in their own battles around the two of them. I am more surprised to see death hasn't worn you out any. Hiro let out a deep T laugh. I trust you have taken on a team that has learned the ways of youth. Guy smirked and grabbed Hiro's newest punch. He threw him through the air. Hiro landed nimbly on his feet. You'd be proud of the team I'm training. Guy was immediately running at him. Oh, Hiro asked as he blocked Guy's punch. Tell me about them. First there is Rock Lee. He dresses the exact same way we do. Listen to this though, he can't use ninjutsu or genjutsu at all. He only has taijutsu. He used to be mediocre at that too, but now it is his greatest strength. The two continued to trade blows. Then there is Hyuga Hinata. She is the heiress to her clan, and when I first met her she was one of the least confident people in the world. Now she believes in herself so much she can even break paralysis and beat opponents no one else could ever dream of. Finally is Uzumaki Naruto. He's a special kid alright. Can create more shadow clones than the eye can see. He dreams to become Hokage someday, and at first he was a long way off, but now he is much closer than ever before. The three of them made it to the third exam of the Chunin exams and performed splendidly. Hiro smiled as he and Guy separated again. It sounds like you've found yourself a great team, Guy. Guy smiled brightly at his sensei. This would be the last time he would ever be able to talk to him again. He had to get serious after this. You bet. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.